Hey everybody, welcome back. Glad you could join me today. This is going to be a special video for you guys. Been wanting to do this one for a while now. This topic is going to be about Roxanne and his epic adventure. I want to tell you guys all about his past year that he's had. Been pretty wild. He ended up spending 3 months missing outside upstate New York, and he was found, and when he came back he ended up becoming a father. Now he's got 33 little babies that he's sired, and today's the 1 year anniversary that he was found. So I want to do a video for you guys and show you how everything happened, tell you the story, tell you the lessons that I've learned. So I'll start right from the beginning here. Tell you guys a little bit about my buddy. Rox was my first bearded dragon. I got him on July 24th, 2015 from one of my best friends. I got a call that day and was informed that there was a bearded dragon in need of rehoming. Rox was just a little baby, probably maybe 8 weeks old or so. I hadn't had a reptile since I was in high school, and I figured that, I was interested. So I went and checked him out, and sure enough, ended up getting him. And he had a pretty uneventful life his first 3 years. He got this custom-made enclosure from his daddy, and he was a pretty spoiled little lizard. So I was actually under the impression that he was a she. So when I was thinking of a good name, some suggestions, I heard the name Roxana, and I liked that a lot. It seemed really fitting for a beardy, and so that was the name I picked. So my little buddy's been getting ready for his brumation. We're coming up on the fall here pretty soon, and he's had a really busy summer. So he's probably going to be sleeping for most of this video, but I don't really want to disturb him too much. I want him to actually have a nice heavy brumation this year. After you hear about his story, you'll understand why. So I'll take you guys right up to the part where he goes missing. Up until that point, I thought Roxanne was a girl. And he was 3 years old when he went missing. It was Father's Day, June 17th, 2018. And I had just gotten off the phone with my dad that morning, wishing him a happy Father's Day. Roxanne was getting real antsy to go outside. He kept coming up here on the windowsill and looking out to the backyard there. I could tell that he wanted to go out. So after I got off the phone with my dad, ended up bringing Roxanne out to get some sunshine. I put him right in the back lawn here. My whole family was out. I put him right here. Oh. So here's the spot where I last saw Roxanne before he went missing on June 17th. Right between the barn and my shack. Came outside. Oh, there's a frog right here. There he is. So I had come out. I put rock sand down in the ground right around here. And then I went down here in the barn to grab a part for my Jeep. Came back under a minute, or around a minute, say, and he was gone. At that point, the only thing I could think was that he must have bolted and went for under the building here. All those raspberry briars weren't quite grown up yet, like they are now. I searched pretty hard under there though, and never found him. My nephews and nieces, my brother and sister-in-law, and my mom and her boyfriend were all here. We were all hanging out back. So I thought there was plenty of eyes to keep a watch on him. So, and anybody that knows me knows I always got a lot of stuff going on. There wasn't anything different about that day. I was working on my Jeep. The Jeep was broken down, and I was looking for a part behind the barn. So I ducked out for about 1 minute, literally 1 minute, and when I came back up, Rox had already left the spot in the grass where I had originally put him, and nobody knew which way he went. So he was I immediately began panicking. Nobody had any idea where he went, and it was getting real hot. It was really hot. It was the hottest day of that year up until that day. I think it got up into the 90s there, mid 90s or so, and it was about noon. So right away I knew that something was wrong, because usually if rocks would disappear on me outside, I knew at least which direction he went, and he would stop. He would only go like 10 feet and stop. So he'd usually just be right out in the middle of the lawn still. Well, that day there was some turkey vultures hovering around, and the sight of that ended up spooking him. So when he took off running, he must have, since nobody was close by for him to run to, because I've seen it before where when the birds are circling overhead, he'll run right for the closest person. He associates people with safety, and when nobody was close by, he ended up just running, and he must have ran for the first bit of cover that he could find. But with the whole family scouring the property, and I was looking frantically, and there was no way we could find him. It was like he had just completely disappeared. And this was before the grass and the brush and everything got really tall out back, so it was just like it seemed like I'd find him any second, and then minutes and hours were going by, and it was like we couldn't find him, and I was getting more worried by the hour. Finally, it was like getting dark and no sign of him or anything, and that's really when it was like hitting me that it was like, oh, Roxanne's in trouble. He's outside. You can't find him. And so I ended up spending the first week. I took the week off from work to look for him. And I had my friends helping me, and my family, my brother and my mom, my brother's wife, and my nieces, my nephews, everybody, the family, friends, helping, and it was, nobody had any luck. We couldn't find any sign, nothing. So it was just, as time went on, it was getting harder and harder. And I remember like the first time that it rained when he was out there, and I knew he was out there somewhere, and that it hit me hard, and it was like one of the biggest bummers I'd ever experienced with animals. Thinking that he was out there just because I took my eye off him for a minute, and he was experiencing the cold and the wet at night, and the predators, the lack of food and water. So anyways, I tried to make the best of the situation and keep a high spirit, which was really difficult, and I probably couldn't have done that without the help of all my buddies keeping my hopes alive. So, but we finally, after about a month, I think is when I started coming around to thinking like I gotta stop spending so much time looking, because it was just breaking me down. I mean, I was spending hours every day looking, and it was like starting to take its toll on me. So I after the first month had started looking less and less, thinking that at that point that, you know, most likely Rox had probably didn't make it, and I was never gonna find out what happened to him. And then a month into it, when I decided that Rox probably most likely hadn't survived, that's when I bought my other babies. I got Rocco now, my other big boy, who's about 14 months now, 15 months, and I got Nova too, who's she's sleeping right now in her cave, and she's still full of eggs, waiting for her to lay her eggs any day now, but being patient about that. So I got my girl and boy after a month of Roxanne being missing, and they grew really fast. By around Christmas time or so, I think they were both about full grown, where they had reached Nova was 19 inches and Rocco was about 21. So I'm getting ahead of myself here though. So I bought the boy and the girl, Nova and Rocco. I set those guys up in these enclosures. So Rocco, at first he went into Roxanne's old enclosure, and then I built this enclosure down here originally for Nova, but it's now this is Rocco's enclosure, and Roxanne is rightfully back in his original enclosure, built just for him. So I built the enclosures, and that was probably into the second month that Rox was missing. By the third month, at that point, I had really given up any hope that Rox was still alive. You know, at that point, it was just, I was still thinking about him every single day, and I would occasionally walk around out back and my neighbors and next door, just seeing if there was any sign. But I knew that it was, at that point, it was just a futile effort. So 3 months goes by, and I'm at work. It's September 18th, 2018, and I had a real busy day that day. There was 2 jobs going on, and I was at my morning job. And in between the 2 jobs, I was going to get my hair cut. So by 11 o'clock, I had heard back from the barber who was going to cut my hair, and she said come up at 12. So I went up, got my hair cut, at 12. And then after I got my hair cut, I was on the way back to the second job. Just getting ready to start the second job of the day. Driving the Jeep. And that's when the phone rang. It was my brother's wife. She said that Roxanne had been found. And at first I couldn't believe it. So I asked her to check Roxanne's tail and see if there was a little bit of a crimped end on his tail from a shed that didn't completely come off when he was a little baby. And sure enough, Roxanne had that. At that point I knew it was Roxanne, so I turned the Jeep around and came back home as fast as I could. So, and as I was pulling in to my brother's house, my brother had just pulled in behind me, and then my best friend Chris pulled in behind my brother. So it was a strange coincidence. Everybody was arriving at the same time. I figured maybe they had heard the news that Rox was found. Everybody was running over to see him, but they hadn't heard yet, and it was just a coincidence. So I got out of the car and was running towards my brother's house, and then my brother came out, and I was like, "Hey, did you hear Rox got found?" And they're just like, "What?" They couldn't believe it. So my buddy Chris and my brother and Craig all were outside talking about how crazy it was, and I had just ran right into the house to see Rox, and he was all wrapped up in a blanket for me. Kyle had him wrapped up. My nieces were petting him and comforting him. They got him some food and some water, and then at that point, you know, it was I could see it in his eyes that it was like he knew that he had been found, that he was going to be alright. He looked a little bit thin, and he was definitely dehydrated, but he looked great considering. I was so happy to see him. I couldn't remember how big he was. So when I first saw him, it was just like, oh my gosh, he's huge. I couldn't believe it, how nice and handsome. Hey guys, I'm back, and I'm up in the Cato Cemetery right now. I want to show you guys how far Roxanne actually went when he was found. There's the water tower. My house is right over that hill there. You can't see it, but it's not in the cemetery, on the other side. So he was found about a mile from my house, down here on the main street in Cato. There's the school. And there's the farm buildings. That's about 3/4 of a mile from the house. The school is about a mile. And right there you'll see buildings with green roof, tin roof. Well, Rox was found right about there, right in the middle of the road, sunbathing, about 6/8 of a mile, 3/4 of a mile from my house on this day 1 year ago. And the story of how he was seen was just a miracle. My brother's wife, her mother was driving from the school in Cato, and she was coming back on the main road there, around the corner where this guy is, say. She got probably around right where he is now, noticed a lizard in the middle of the road, sunbathing. She ended up pulling over. She recognized that not very many people out here have lizards, and She thought maybe another one of Josh's animals escaped or something. So she ended up grabbing a t-shirt. She rounded up the lizard. She ended up putting the blanket over him. She wasn't sure if he was gonna bite. Which, knowing Rox, I know that he wouldn't have bit, but being outside for 3 months, it's hard to say what happened. 'Cause it was obviously his instincts kicked in enough to keep him alive for those 3 months. So I guess I wasn't really sure if he would have bit either, but regardless, she ended up putting the shirt on him, covered him up. Then she tried to get back into her car, and that's when she discovered that she had actually locked herself out of the car. Thankfully, she still had her cell phone on her though. And well, she didn't lock herself out of the car. Her dog ended up hitting the lock button while she was out in the road wrangling up Roxanne. The dog ended up hitting the button inside the car, and the doors got locked. So she ended up calling up her husband. He came out with a spare set of keys and ended up rescuing her. And then they made their way back to my brother's house. So just one more time, show you guys here how far away that actually is. And I'm up here in the cemetery. So he made it about 3/4 of a mile, almost actually, probably more. I'll have to measure it out and get back to you guys, but it's probably more, because the school's a mile, and it's awfully close to the school there. So it's amazing he was able to traverse that far, a little animal like himself. Last year this was a cornfield, so I have a feeling that he must have went in there at some point and made his way alongside the road. Maybe he heard the noise from the road and it drove him out. And he found that the road was a nice spot to bask. He was getting his heat. So I'm very lucky. The whole story was really honestly a miracle. And I'm very grateful that it turned out the way that it did. So I'll catch you guys back up on the other side. So now at this point, this is when well, I still thought Roxanna was a girl at that point, because I had never even really questioned it before. But when I had gotten my 2 new babies, I wanted to know their gender as soon as possible. So I started doing a lot of research and got pretty good at being able to determine the differences. And I knew that Rocco was a boy and Nova was a girl. So, and then when I took a look at Roxanne, that's when I got surprised, and I was like, then I came to the conclusion that that Rox was a boy. Roxanna. So, and I was so used to the name Roxanna for so many years that I really couldn't change it, even just out of habit. Even if I tried to change the name, it would still come out. So now I just added an O on the end and took the A off, and I call him Roxanno. So, and he doesn't seem to mind. I think he associates that with his name. But anyways, so Roxanne was found after 3 months. He was a little dehydrated, but he was in pretty good health considering. And I have a wildlife biology background, so I did a little bit of investigation of his stool samples just to make sure he didn't have any parasites. and everything looked really good for me, so I came to the conclusion that I didn't even have to bring him to the vet because he just looked so healthy. And there's nothing of concern for me to even mention to the vet. So, and I don't know, my buddy's looking pretty good now too. He's 1.5 pounds now, 21 inches. So after Roxanne was found healthy, and his daddy got him brought back up to the house, and the first thing I did was give him a bath. And I think I gave him a bath twice a day for the first couple weeks when he got back, because he was caked with some dirt and mud, and he had a little bit of dehydration going on. But I was able to tell he was dehydrated because his eyes were a little bit sunken in, and he had when I would pinch his belly skin, it would stay folded out instead of retracting back in. So, two good signs to determine if your beardie's dehydrated. But Roxanne was dehydrated, but I was able to get him all scored away. I don't think he had any kidney damage or anything like that. I was able to catch it soon enough. So, and I honestly think that he was able to survive out there for 3 months, because his body must have went into a mini brumation, and he was able to slow himself down enough at nighttime and during the day where he didn't need quite the quantity of food, and was able to cope with the cold nights. We had nights that were dropping down into the 50s and upper 40s. So I was very concerned that Roxanne might have developed a respiratory infection, but he didn't have any signs of it. So we were both very, very lucky. So he's very lucky lizard. Probably one of the luckiest in the world, if you ask me. He's got 3 months where he was missing outside that he survived under his belt now. But when he came back, one of the biggest regrets that I had when he was missing was that I never tried breeding bearded dragons and having a couple babies and hatching the eggs. So when my female beardie started laying in fertile clutches, that's when I started thinking about doing a pairing between Roxanne and Nova. But at that point, Nova was still growing, and I didn't really want to quite rush anything. But Nova would go through stages of pregnancy with the eggs, and she would get into heat, and so when she was in her heat, it was really hard to keep her from trying to visit with the boys there. And so one day I ended up letting her visit with Roxanne, and they only bred one time, but there was enough to have 2 fertile clutches of eggs. And the first clutch was 12 eggs, and the second clutch was 21. So Roxanne's got 33 babies now that he's fathered, all between the ages of 2 months and 3 months old now, and growing fast. So now he's a proud father also, all in 1 year. So he's had a very busy year, missing for 3 months and fathering 33 babies. Now he's getting ready to go back into his brumation. I'm gonna let him brumate real hard this year too, because I know he needs a good rest. So he's got a big belly right now. I'll help pull him through. So he hasn't gone to the bathroom in a couple days now, and he's really not eating much. I had turned this light off for a little while there last week when he was doing the same thing. So he's doing kind of these mini cycles leading up to a big brumation, I think. And I'm gonna let it happen. So well, I think that's about most of Rox's story. His big adventure this past year. I'm hoping I can put this video together with some good pictures and other video clips to show you guys as I'm explaining everything. Well, I hope you guys are having a good week so far. I hope you enjoyed this video, hearing about Roxanne's story. Don't forget to check out the website, roxannasdragons.com. You can see all of my my little boy's babies here. I got a care guide. I also build custom enclosures. I still do have a few babies available for sale. All my contact information's on there as well. So if you guys like the video, don't forget to thumbs up, subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye.